Hello and welcome to The Loop. I am Louis Robinson, and as always, joining me from the other side of the pond at a completely different time zone, which always makes me feel like I'm talking from the future, Mr. Joe Dunbar. How are we doing, Joe?
Wonderful. Different time zone, different location than I'm normally at too. So good to be here as always and see your smiling face, my friend. You're keeping cool?
Yeah, it was good, mate. I'm all good here. It's another hot day over here in England, so no complaining, not moaning. We love the sunshine over here.
I suppose the couple of days you get it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it feels like every episode we've done so far, people are going to be like, you've clearly filmed these episodes one after the other and just changed clothes. This is not the case. We've actually had about 3 or 4 weeks of hot weather over in the UK, which is nice.
It's about time. Finally do. We've been talking about a bunch of stuff, Louis. I know we've got more on the docket. What are we talking about today, man?
So this week's episode, I wanted to focus on perspectives from an audio side, from a video side, and also from a user interface side too. It's all about accessibility. It's all about making spaces work better for people. And it's all about thinking when you're deploying kit, how can you get the best out of that kit by putting it in the right place so it's getting the best perspective of what it's trying to do.
I love that. That's certainly a hot topic. We'll wrap it up. I've got a couple of Teams and Zoom updates and a few things, just some minor stuff on the way out the door. But man, let's dive into it. You got the thought of perspective, audio, video, user experience. I mean, which side of that comes first? Does one affect the other? Where do you usually start when you're talking about perspective and design?
First, you got to talk about audio. Audio, when you're talking about meeting rooms, is the most important part of the puzzle. 100%.
Absolutely.
If you can't hear people, the meeting's over, right? Mm-hmm. If you can see people, we're not going to start doing this to each other and writing signs to try and get our message across. So audio is always the number one place I start. And I'm going to bring the question so that everyone can get the right perspective on what I'm trying to say here. I'm plugging it way too much.
I know. We're going to play it up. That's what we're here for. That's what we're here for, man.
The number one question to me is, how do we deploy audio in video conferencing spaces? Now, typically, I see a lot of designs where people will put audio in 4 corners of each room, right? So let's say they put the speakers in the ceiling, so the 4 corners, and they effectively just fill the room full of audio, right? Which sounds good, right? Because everywhere's going to be covered. But 2 problems I've got with that. One is a lot of the time I see there's absolutely overkill for the space they're trying to fill and what you're trying to get from that space. The other problem is, again, plug in the perspective here. Where's the audio coming from? So if you've got 4 speakers in each corner of the room playing audio back to you and you're on a video call and the far end is speaking and they come through those speakers, for some people in the room, that audio is behind them.
Right.
And that's just not a good feeling when you're in a meeting or when you're talking to people in general, right? If I'm talking to you, you're in front of me. If we're having a conversation over video, you're in front of me. If we're in person, I'm hoping you're in front of me.
Or to the side, and that's where your sound source is coming from, right? You're talking about perspective, and that can be a little jarring and disorienting to hear audio come from one place and the visual of that audio source come from another place, right?
Exactly so, right? Exactly so. So when we're looking at designs for rooms, we're talking to people now a lot about putting speakers along the middle of the room as opposed to those 4 corners. That way, when you're sat at a table, the audio is coming from the place you'd expect it to come from, which for the majority of people will be in front of them if they're sat around the table. Yes, If people turn around and they're looking in different ways of the room, the audio then will come from different areas because obviously it's in the middle. But for the majority of the time, the audio is going to be dead center in the room, which is going to be in front of everyone in the room, which should be where the source they're looking to for the far end is as well. So from a perspective point of view, the microphone is going to be picking everyone up from the center of the room to get everyone covered. And then the playback audio, too, is going to be right in front of people.
It's interesting. We've seen a lot of developments and continuing to happen. So, right, in spatial audio. And I'm interested to see how that's going to come into play. I think about a manufacturer who nothing you carry, nothing we carry, not necessarily a Midwich partner, but a manufacturer in the AV space who released a speaker, call it 6 to 10 years ago, that was designed to be up in the front center, right in line with like the camera and right in line with the display and everything, so that the audio could still fill the room, but felt like it was coming from the front of the room, to your point. And that was something that I was very impressed with at the time, but didn't quite take off the way I thought it might. especially for how effective the solution was. But now I think about so many things that like are ahead of their time, right? And maybe come out a little bit before the market is ready to adopt it, maybe before the channel is ready to really learn and learn how to deploy these solutions effectively. So maybe that was the case, and with the use of spatial audio coming and happening, really, I feel like maybe that was the case. It was just a little too early for something like that, and now we're at a point where people are using this stuff on a more regular basis, and we've discovered this is a hitch, this is a catch, this is a gotcha, that we really want to have this audio and the video lined up and in sync, and especially in solutions like with front row and larger format displays where you have a large amount of space and somebody's head might be over here and another person's head might be over there. And so when you hear that audio, it makes all the sense in the world for it to come from that direction so that you turn and get into that direction. So it's certainly a hot topic. What does that do? What do you guys, I mean, what's your go-to flavor? I mean, I know what Midwich has on the line card, and I don't want to make this commercial, but do you have like a go-to flavor for audio capture? Right, in terms of perspective?
It's a hard one, that one, because yes and no. We tend never really to have a favorite of where we go with things. It's all for specific design of room when people come to us. Now, a lot of the time, let's say I'm going to go down that center of the room lineup that I was just talking about. If I'm going to go for a deployment like that, Biamp, 100%, a lot of the time is a brand we're talking about. But again, two reasons, right? It's not just because they've got the microphones, the speakers, the DSPs, the amps all in one solution, but they've also got what they call their launch feature. So for anyone who's kitting out meeting rooms who are not au fait with audio programming, push the button on launch and it will EQ and volume the microphones and the speakers for the space. Again, making sure that what is being captured is right. So Biamp is a great vendor for us to talk about, especially when we're talking to people that are just not really that in depth when it comes to their audio programming knowledge. Just today I had a conversation with someone about Dante. For people who know Dante, and this is what I said to them, it's a simple ecosystem to work in. But until you've worked in the ecosystem, it can be quite daunting to jump into it, especially when you want to get things right for your clients. Something is
daunting, Dante.
Jump in. You're going to say, like tomato, Dante.
Yeah, daunting Dante. That's a great example that you bring up. I get into first-time Dante users a lot. I get into conversations with first-time Dante users and programmers and field technicians that are really getting into it early on. And the same kind of response. It's always a little intimidating at first, but it come to find out like this is a matrix. It's audio routing. It's still all at the core. We're just talking about routing inputs to outputs, right? So that's really at the heart of it, which is not too daunting once you really break it down to that. Biamp, great solution, not something we have here stateside. Yamaha fits that bill for us. You can see me with all my Shure gear. We do a lot of that as well and a couple other solutions. But I feel like, so if you're talking center of the room, for your speakers, I mean, how do you fill out a space? Is there size limitations to do that to when you're designing those kinds of spaces? If it gets wider, are you doing more kind of center rows wider in the room? Does that make sense? Do you get what I'm asking?
Yeah, I know. Where
how do you fill out a larger space?
It always depends, right? So if we are looking at big spaces, again, we're going to be thinking about where the table is situated. So if you've got U-shaped tables, if you've got just normal rectangle tables, you might have arced tables in these spaces too.
Definitely.
We'll try as we can to match where that audio is coming from. Now, it might be that a room is quite big, but the audio source, you were talking about spatial audio, right? And some of those audio manufacturers that use bars at the front of the room to have the perspective of where the person is talking from, then that comes into play at the room design. And all of these things that come into play is all down to end user experience and where they're going to be sat in the room. I tend to use the middle of the room analogy or deployment style as a good starter point for people to understand it. Because a lot of people think it is best just to flood the room with audio. And if I say, should we put all of the audio at the front? Some people have that challenge of, it's all well and good from a mic pickup perspective, but a playback perspective, people that are far away need it loud, people that are close need it quiet. There's all those kind of things. So that middle of the room kind of start off point is a good place to help people understand where audio would effectively come from if you were sat in that room.
I feel like we're getting into a conversation about like, it's almost like a mix minus scenario and a voice lift proper voice lift, mix minus scenario, except it's not in-room voice lift. Do you know what I mean? Like virtual voice lift, if you will, which is, I mean, kind of makes me boggle my mind a little bit to think about, but that's kind of what it feels like we're getting into. What does that do then to video? Right? Like then now, so okay, we're talking about audio and perspective and having that in alignment, and then the video is going to follow that. You mentioned the user experience, but what about cameras? What do you guys see? What are you doing to accompany that audio solution?
So Huddly have just come out with a new update for their S1. It's not on the rest of the lineup yet, but I've been told it might be something that's coming in the future. Right. They've come up with a perspective framing solution now with the S1, which means the video capture will keystone to make it look like the camera is flat on with the individuals in the room. Wow. Now, in today's world, we're seeing screens get bigger and bigger, and even the introduction of LED walls going into meeting rooms, which
definitely
camera placement is difficult, right? If you go too high, you're looking down on people, and if you go too low, you're looking up on people, and it's just not an angle that you want to be looking at. Mm-hmm. So having that keystoning now done on the camera to make it look like it's flat allows us to put cameras in different locations, but still get that perspective where we are looking at each other from an eye level. And that, like, body language is a massive part of our communication. Look at it dead in the eye when you're talking to them. It's huge when it comes to engagement. So having Huddly come out with that now is great to see. And as a camera brand goes, we all know Huddly. They're here for innovation. They're always looking at the next step they're going to take their cameras. And the good thing is, you don't need to buy additional hardware with Huddly. If you've got the camera already and you get the updates, you're getting all of these great features. And that is at the heart and soul of their business. So it's really good to see a manufacturer getting that angle too now and really focusing on how we can capture people properly.
Absolutely. I see a lot here of Huddly, of course, Jabra Panicast, similar solution that we end up using quite a bit here that, works with the keystoning and takes a super wide camera view and flattens it out to make it look like it's an appropriate, so people are the right proportions in addition to the view being more spot on. I think about the D10 bar now coming out and the view cameras that they have, and all of that focus is really about getting the camera more to the center line, more to the line of sight, so it feels like you're sitting or standing in front of somebody, however the setup is, right? So those are all solutions I see. And then more traditionally, a two-camera setup where I have one facing the front of the room on my presenter or the, kind of the head of the table, whatever the case may be, and then another one coming back looking at what would be the audience or the rest of the group or something like that. And that, a lot of demand for that. We are seeing more solutions that help our partners. I think about like the Aver MT300, the tracking box that they have. I certainly think about like the Huddly Crew solution that are making meetings better perspectives, and then taking those perspectives to the next step and saying we're going to sort of automatically produce this to switch between multiple cameras, and so it follows the right people in the right places. So that's something we see a lot here on our side in terms of the visual perspective. What about the user experience? We mentioned that earlier. I know that's we're on the other end of a call right now. I'm not going to bore all the people by explaining what our setup is right now, especially with me being here at HQ in the office. This is a different setup than I'm normally using, but I have a camera here, I have you sort of next to it, and a couple places to monitor back, and it's like I want this to feel as natural as possible, so I have all that kind of squished together. But not everybody has that ability in their office. At the home office, they can't necessarily do that. So that's where I think solutions like, the D10 bar and the view cameras and all that stuff make it more effective for somebody to get something that's a great perspective from the end user perspective. So on the other end of the call, I really feel like I'm sitting there. And that's what we're going for, right?
Exactly. And D10 is another great one to talk about, right? When you're going into those larger spaces and they've got their dual screens with the camera bar down the middle and all the audio down the middle again, it's just a great layout when it comes to capturing that eye line, capturing that perspective of where everyone wants to be looking when they're communicating with people. We find it a lot as well when I'm talking to end users, and especially when they're at home, right? And you're helping them kit out specs for their offices, and you can see them doing this when you're talking to them.
Yep.
And it's not only distracting for you when you're talking to them about stuff, it's distracting for them as well, because they're trying to go, where am I? And they're kind of looking at themselves because they're seeing their camera an angle that it probably shouldn't be. And then they're trying to find you in the window and all stuff like that, which just takes away from how productive a meeting can be. And all of this perspective comes back down to that. It boils down to one thing. If you're using this technology for meetings, you have to think about how the ROI on all of that is playing back to you. And if you're spending a lot of your meeting time trying to find things or being distracted because someone's listening to something over here or they can't find the right place, it's just not making the most out of the time frame they've got, right?
That's the ROI of it is a great call out. I think about fatigue, meeting fatigue, and especially at the beginning of the pandemic when all this really kind of set in and people were kind of starting to be more online and virtual calls than they ever were. Now we're at a point where we're more experienced with the technology and things are getting much better. So we talked about audio capture and the perspective of that. So that's help reducing meeting fatigue. But from the user perspective, where I'm looking and where I'm hearing has a lot to do with that. If this feels more like a natural conversation in one way, shape, or form, or multiple ways, then each of those helps reduce the amount of meeting fatigue. And it then, in turn, helps increase the productivity, right? Now we can stay focused on what we're here to talk about, which at the end of the day, that's why all this stuff exists, so we can, collaborate productively and hopefully profitably.
Exactly that, right? And I tend to find as well, it's very difficult to talk to someone about this and then really take in the value of it. So a lot of the time, it does come down to us doing a demo of different situations and different scenarios to show people, this is how it would look done this way, this is how it would look done this way, and what works best for you. Because there's a lot of ways we can do this, and there's a lot of ways technology is steering us to put things in different places. But what works for you? How does that translate to your environment? How does that translate to your end users?
Right. Well, perspective topic of the day. I love it. Louis, I've got a couple updates if you're ready for them. And we can boogie out of here and keep the people up to date. I've got a couple, though. I'll do my best to keep it brief if you're ready for it.
Go on, you fire away, mate. I've got one that I want to talk about as well. So you go first, and then I'll drop in mine.
I won't get too into the weeds. I say that all the time right before I dive off the deep end into the weeds. We've had ongoing conversations about Pexip Connect and the interoperability that's being brought to market by this solution. I have requested a demo. We're going to do that together when it gets scheduled and lined up. Right now, calendars are not playing well with us. I've been traveling. You've been out a little bit, and the Pexip team is busy as well. What I can tell the folks out there is we did get a couple of updates, and in a nutshell, what I will comfortably say is, the Pexip Connect solution is a solution that works with the hardware manufacturers, and they can integrate it into their products and solutions. So D10 is an example we've just been talking about today. I had them on the AV Exchange last week, and we talked a little bit about interoperability and what they're calling D10 Connect powered by Pexip. So that's kind of how we're going to see it. And that, as we've been discussing, is how we're going to get better interoperability between the platforms, I want to say, because there are more than just the two that we tend to talk about a lot in Zoom and Teams. There's, Blue Jeans and Ring and Google and all the other ones as well. So I'm excited to see how that develops. We'll keep coming at you with that. So Microsoft and Zoom, now I'm pinning into the two that we talk about the most. Okay. There was some Microsoft updates, and the only thing I really want to mention about it is new certified hardware, particularly from our lineup as a Midwich Group company. Aver Camera got an update. QSys Camera Suite is now certified. There's some Lenovo and Logi headsets added in there as well. And I don't know if you've seen this before, but Teams has built their hot desking and hoteling functionality is now in the new Teams layout. So I won't get into the weeds. I've watched a lot of videos on the admin side of that, on how to set that up and how it can be effectively used. There's a bunch of good stuff out there. Hit the Google machine and you'll find it if you're interested, or drop in the comments if you want us to talk about it more, and we certainly will. The last one, some Zoom updates. I'm checking my notes here. There were some firmware updates from a late July release, and we hadn't talked about it yet. Now here we are in kind of mid to late August. We're getting there. But my favorite update or feature added in the update for Zoom is now in-meeting contact requests. So it used to be that, if you wanted to add somebody, especially externally as a contact in Zoom, you'd have to go add them as a contact, send them an email, whatever. And now if you're in that meeting with somebody, You can do it right from Zoom and, click the buttons and say add the contact, which is, it's a small thing, but it's a huge thing for me and my usability. So that's my updates this week, down and dirty, mostly talking about the UC stuff, which we will break out of, but is obviously, at the core of our business quite a bit. What do you have going on, Louis? Tell me.
So I just want to talk quickly about one of the Microsoft updates that have come out. So on the Windows devices, not the Android, but the Windows devices, in the latest upgrade, again, talking about perspective here, keeping on topic, you can now go into the UI and you can adjust the font sizes of everything that you will see on that UI. So from an accessibility point of view and people being able to interact with things a bit easier, you could say increasing that font size now will make it a lot easier for a lot more people, which is a cool update to see. And it's good to see that Microsoft are thinking about things like that when they bring out their updates. Again, something really simple, but something that could make a massive impact on people and how they use Rooms, work it out with Teams.
I don't know about you, man, but I very much, those little things start to add up over time. And when you're using a solution, it's like, oh, this little thing bugs me and that little thing bugs me. And individually, those things are just little things. But then you have a whole slew of little things that like, oh, maybe I don't use that solution because of all these little things. So all these solutions and platforms and manufacturers coming out with more updates, which I love to see that they're focusing on the usability and making things easier and more accessible for people. So I'm excited to see that. We'll for sure come back at you with more updates, but I appreciate that one.
Yeah, it's definitely as well, when it comes to those small updates, I think they make the most impact for the day-to-day end users, right? When we get those large updates of the real in the nuts and bolts, all of these upgrades going on from like admin perspectives or installation perspectives and all stuff like that are great for me and you because we can get excited about those. But it's the little things usually that make the biggest impact for the guys that are using it on the day-to-day. So it's really exciting to see that stuff.
Well, I'm really hoping that our systems integrations partners who are out there installing this stuff take this information away, and next time they're doing a deployment with their end user, these are little things that they can point out and teach to them so that your end user's experience is more positive and obviously more of a positive experience with our partners. Keep them coming back and keep building that relationship to work together is the goal.
Yeah, exactly. Now, Joe, as always, mate, me and you can talk on all day if we wanted to. But the idea is to keep these short and sweet so people can keep updated. So we should probably cut this one off for this week.
That sounds good, man. That's another good one for August. We'll be back in 2 more weeks, wrapping up the end of the month. And I hate to say it, moving into fall, but maybe get you a little relief from the sweltering heat you've been experiencing.
Can you tell your end of the camera that I am in the humidity level of an unbelievable amount?
No, man, you look as good as ever. We can't tell. So if you're feeling it there, you're wearing it well, and we appreciate that for sure, man. I thank you, as always, for having me.
Thanks for joining me, Joe. Honestly, mate, it's been a pleasure as always. Anyone tuning in, don't forget, like, comment, subscribe. Most importantly, though, like I say, comment. Let us know what your thoughts are. Let us know what you want us to go and find out. Let us know what you want us to talk about. We're doing this for you. The more you let us know, the better we can make the episodes. So, Joe, that's it for another week, mate. That's it for the show. We'll catch everyone in the next episode when we've gone away and done some more digging and diving, and hopefully we can sort out that Pexib Connect deep dive demo.
We'll keep on it. Thanks, Louis. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.